Glory to God the Father and Son Yeshua Mashiach. 2 Kings chapter 22. Josiah does right. Yoshiyahu was 8 years old when he began his reign, and he ruled for 31 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Yedidah, the daughter of Adiah from Botzkat. He did what was right from Adonai's perspective, living entirely in the manner of David his ancestor and turning away neither to the right nor to the left. The temple is restored. In the 18th year of King Yoshiyahu, the kings sent Shaphan the son of Atzaliahu, the son of Meshullam, the secretary, to the house of Adonai after instructing him. Go up to Hilkiyahu the Kohen Haggadol, and have him total the money that has been brought into the house of Adonai, which the doorkeepers have collected from the people. Then have them give it to the supervisors of the work being done in the house of Adonai. They in turn are to use it to pay the laborers in the house of Adonai to repair damaged places in the building. The carpenters, construction workers and stonemasons, and to purchase timber and worked stone for doing the repairs on the building. However, they did not require an accounting from the supervisors given the money to spend, because they dealt honestly. The book of the law is discovered. Hilkiyahu the Kohen Haggadol said to Shaphan the secretary, I have found the scroll of the Torah in the house of Adonai. Hilkiah gave the scroll to Shaphan, who read it. Then Shaphan the secretary went back to the king and gave the king this report. Your servants have poured out the money found in the house and handed it over to the people supervising the work in the house of Adonai. Shaphan the secretary also told the king, Hilkiah the Kohen Haggadol gave me a scroll. Then Shaphan read it aloud before the king. The repentance of Josiah. After the king had heard what was written in the scroll of the Torah, he tore his clothes. Then the king issued this order to Hilkiah the Kohen, Ahikam the son of Shaphan, Akbor the son of Micaiah, Shaphan the secretary and Asaiah the king's servant. Go and consult Adonai for me, for the people and for all Yehudah in regard to what is written in this scroll which has been found. For Adonai must be furious at us, since our ancestors did not listen to the words written in this scroll and didn't do everything written there that concerns us. So Hilkiyahu the Kohen, Ahikam, Akbor, Shaphan and Asaiah went to Huldah the prophet, the wife of Shallum the son of Tikvah, the son of Karkas, keeper of the wardrobe. She lived in the second quarter of Jerusalem, and spoke with her. The prophecy of blessing. She told them, Adonai the God of Israel says to tell the man who sent you to me, that Adonai says this, I am going to bring calamity on this place and on its inhabitants. Every word in the scroll the king of Yehudah has read. Because they have abandoned me and offered to other gods, in order to provoke me with everything they do. Therefore my anger will burn against this place and will not be quenched. But you are to tell the king of Yehudah, who sent you to consult Adonai, that Adonai the God of Israel also says this, in regard to the words you have heard. Because your heart was tender, and you humbled yourself before Adonai when you heard what I said against this place and its inhabitants, that they would become an object of astonishment and cursing, and have torn your clothes and cried before me, I have also heard you, says Adonai. Therefore I will gather you to your ancestors, you will go to your grave in peace, and your eyes will not see all the calamity I am going to bring on this place. So they brought word back to the king. 2 Kings chapter 23. The institution of the covenant. Then the king summoned all the leaders of Yehuda and Jerusalem, and they assembled with him. The king went up to the house of Adonai with all the men of Yehuda, all those living in Jerusalem, the Kohanim, the prophets and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their hearing everything written in the scroll of the covenant that had been found in the house of Adonai. The king stood on the platform and made a covenant in the presence of Adonai to live following Adonai, observing his mitzvot, instructions and regulations wholeheartedly and with all his being, so as to confirm the words of the covenant written in this scroll. All the people stood, pledging themselves to keep the covenant. The reforms because of the covenant. Then the king ordered Hilkiyahu the Kohen Haggadol, the Kohanim of the second rank and the doorkeepers to remove from the sanctuary of Adonai all the articles that had been made for Baal, for the Asherah and for the entire army of heaven. And he burned them up outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron and carried their ashes to Beit El. He deposed the idolatrous priests the kings of Yehuda had ordained to offer on the high places by the cities of Yehuda and in the places surrounding Jerusalem. He also deposed those who offered to Baal, the sun, the moon, the constellations and the whole army of heaven. He took the Asherah from the house of Adonai to Vadi Kidron outside Jerusalem and burned it in Vadi Kidron, stamped the ashes to powder and threw the powder onto the burial ground for the common people. He smashed the houses of the cult prostitutes that were in the house of Adonai, where the women also wove garments for the Asherah. He removed the Kohanim from the cities of Yehuda. Then, from Geva to Beersheba, he desecrated the high places where the Kohanim had been making offerings. He also smashed the high places of the gates that were at the entrance of the gate of Yehoshua the governor of the city, on the left as one enters the city. But although the Kohanim who had been at the high places did not come up to the altar of Adonai in Jerusalem, nevertheless they did share matzah with their kinsmen. He desecrated the Tophet fire pit in the Ben Hinnom valley, so that no one could cause his son or daughter to pass through fire, as a sacrifice to Molech. He confiscated the horses which the kings of Yehuda had given to the sun, at the entrance to the house of Adonai near the room of the officer Netan Melech in the side courtyard, and he burned up the chariots of the sun. The king smashed the altars on the roof of the upper room of Achaz, which the kings of Yehuda had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courtyards of the house of Adonai. He broke them into pieces and threw the rubble into Vadi Kidron. The king desecrated the high places facing Jerusalem south of the Mount of Destruction, which Shlomo the king of Israel had built for Ashtoreth the abomination of the Zidonim, Chemosh the abomination of Moab and Milcom the abomination of the people of Ammon. He smashed the standing stones, chopped down the sacred poles and covered their remains with human bones. He smashed the altar that was at Beit El and the high place made by Yerovam the son of Nevat, who caused Israel to sin. Yes, he smashed that altar and the high place. He burned the high place, stamped the ashes to powder, and burned up the Asherah. Then, as Yoshiyahu was turning around, he noticed the burial caves that were there on the mountain. So he sent and had the bones taken out of the burial caves and burned them on the altar, thus desecrating it, in keeping with the word of Adonai which the man of God had proclaimed, foretelling that these things would happen. Then he asked, "This monument here that I'm looking at, what is it?" The men of the city told him, "It marks the burial cave of the man of God who came from Yehuda and foretold the very things you have done to the altar of Beit El." He replied, "Let him be. No one is to move his bones." So they left his bones undisturbed, along with the bones of the prophet who had come from Shomron. Yoshiyahu also removed all the shrines of the high places in the cities of Shomron, which the kings of Israel had made in order to provoke Adonai to anger, and treated him the same as in Beit El. He put to death all the priests of those high places on the altars there, then burned human bones on them. Finally he returned to Jerusalem. The king issued this order to all the people: observe Pesach to Adonai your God, as written in this scroll of the covenant. For Pesach had not been so observed since the days when the judges ruled Israel, not during the times of any of the kings of Israel or of the kings of Yehudah. But in the 18th year of King Yoshiyahu this Pesach was observed to Adonai in Jerusalem. Yoshiyahu got rid of the mediums and the people using spirit guides, as well as the household gods, the idols and all the disgusting things spotted anywhere in Yehudah and Jerusalem. He did this in order to establish the words of the Torah written in the scroll Hilkiyahu the Kohen had found in the house of Adonai. No previous king was like him, because he turned to Adonai with all his heart, with all his being and with all his power, in accordance with all the Torah of Moshe, nor did any king like him arise afterwards. Nevertheless, Adonai did not turn away from his fiercely raging, furious anger that burned against Yehudah because of all the things Manasseh had done to provoke him. Adonai said, "Just as I removed Israel, I will also remove Yehudah out of my sight, and I will reject this city, which I chose, Jerusalem, and the house concerning which I said, my name will be there." The state of the nations under Josiah. Other activities of Yoshiyahu and all his accomplishments are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehudah. During his time Pharaoh Necho king of Egypt went up toward the Euphrates River to attack the king of Ashur. King Yoshiyahu went out to oppose him. But at Megiddo, Pharaoh spotted Yoshiyahu and killed him. The death of Josiah. His servants carried his dead body from Megiddo to Jerusalem in a chariot and buried him in his own tomb. The people of the land took Jehoiakaz the son of Yoshiyahu, anointed him and made him king in his father's place. The reign of Jehoahaz over Judah. Jehoiakaz was 23 years old when he began his reign, and he ruled for 3 months in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal the daughter of Yirmiyahu from Livnah. He did what was evil from Adonai's perspective, following the example of everything his ancestors had done. Pharaoh Necho imprisoned him at Rivlah in the land of Hamath, so that he would not be able to rule in Jerusalem. He also imposed a penalty on the land of 3 1/4 tons of silver and 66 pounds of gold. Then Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim the son of Yoshiyahu king in place of Yoshiyahu his father and changed his name to Jehoiakim. He also carried Jehoiakaz off to Egypt where he died. The reign of Jehoiakim over Judah. Jehoiakim remitted the silver and gold to Pharaoh. But in order to pay the money Pharaoh demanded, he had to levy a tax on the land. He taxed the people of the land, each according to his means, to pay the silver and gold to Pharaoh Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began his reign, and he ruled for 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zebudah the daughter of Pedaiah, from Rumah. He did what was evil from the perspective of Adonai, following the example of everything his ancestors had done. 2 Kings chapter 24. It was in Jehoiakim's time that Nebuchadnezzar king of Babel invaded. Jehoiakim became his vassal for 3 years, but then he turned against him and rebelled. Adonai sent against him raiding parties from the Kasdim, Aram, Moab and the people of Ammon. He sent them against Yehudah to destroy it, in keeping with the word of Adonai which he had spoken through his servants the prophets. Yes, it was at Adonai's order that this happened to Yehudah, in order to remove them from his sight because of the sins of Manasseh and all he had done, and also because of the innocent blood he had shed, for he had flooded Jerusalem with innocent blood, and Adonai was unwilling to forgive. Other activities of Jehoiakim and all his accomplishments are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehudah. Then Jehoiakim slept with his ancestors, and Jehoiachin his son took his place as king. The king of Egypt did not leave his own land anymore, because the king of Babel had captured all the territory of the king of Egypt between the Valley of Egypt and the Euphrates River. The reign of Jehoiachin over Judah. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he began his reign, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 3 months. His mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan, from Jerusalem. He did what was evil from Adonai's perspective, following the example of everything his father had done. It was then that the officers of Nebuchadnezzar king of Babel marched on Jerusalem and laid siege to the city. Nebuchadnezzar king of Babel himself went to the city while it was under siege. And Jehoiachin king of Yehudah went out to meet the king of Babel, he, his mother, and his servants, princes and officers, and the king of Babel took him captive in the 8th year of his reign. He also carried away from there all the treasures in the house of Adonai and the treasures in the royal palace. He cut in pieces all the articles of gold which Shlomo king of Israel had made in the temple of Adonai, as Adonai had said would happen. He carried all Jerusalem away captive, all the princes, all the bravest soldiers, 10,000 captives, also all the craftsmen and metalworkers. No one was left but the poorest people of the land. Jehoiachin he carried off to Babel. Likewise he carried off the king's mother, the king's wives, his officers and the main leaders of the land from Jerusalem into captivity in Babel. All the strong men, 7,000 of them, as well as 1,000 craftsmen and metalsmiths, all of them strong and trained for war, the king of Babel brought captive to Babel. Zedekiah does evil. The king of Babel made Mattaniah, Jehoiachin's father's brother, king in place of Jehoiachin and changed his name to Sidkiyahu. Sidkiyahu was 21 years old when he began to rule, and he ruled for 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Yirmiyahu, from Livnah. He did what was evil from the perspective of Adonai, following the example of everything Jehoiakim had done. The nations under Zedekiah. And it was because of Adonai's anger that all these things happened to Jerusalem and Yehudah, until he had thrown them out of his presence. Sidkiyahu rebelled against the king of Babel. 2 Kings chapter 25. So in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th day of the month, Nebuchadnezzar king of Babel marched against Jerusalem with his entire army. He set up camp against it and built siege towers against it on every side. The city remained under siege into the 11th year of King Sidkiyahu. On the 9th day of the 4th month, when the famine in the city was so severe that there was no food for the people of the land, they broke through into the city. All the soldiers fled by night through the gate between the 2 walls, near the king's garden. Because the Casdim was surrounding the city, the king took the route through the Arava. But the army of the Casdim went in pursuit of the king and overtook him on the plains near Jericho. All his troops deserted him. Then they took the king and brought him up to the king of Bavel in Rivlah, where they passed judgment on him. They slaughtered his sons before his eyes. Then they put out Sidkiahu's eyes, bound him in chains and carried him off to Bavel. In the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was also the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Bavel, Nebuzaradan, the commander of the guard and an officer of the king of Bavel, entered Jerusalem. He burned down the house of Adonai, the royal palace and all the houses in Jerusalem, every notable person's house he burned to the ground. The whole army of the Casdim, who were with the commander of the guard, broke down the walls of Jerusalem on every side. Nebuzaradan the commander of the guard then deported the remaining population of the city, the deserters who had defected to the king of Bavel and the rest of the common people. But the commander of the guard left behind some of the poor people of the land to be vineyard workers and farmers. The Casdim smashed the bronze columns in the house of Adonai, also the trolleys and bronze sea that were in the house of Adonai, and carried their bronze to Bavel. They also took away the pots, shovels, snuffers, pans, and all the bronze articles that had been used for worship. The commander of the guard took the censers, the sprinkling bowls, everything made of gold and everything made of silver. The bronze in the 2 columns, the 1 sea and the bases, all of which Shlomo had made for the house of Adonai, was more than could be weighed. The height of 1 column was 31.5 feet. On it was a capital of bronze 5.25 feet high, with netting and pomegranates all around the capital, all of bronze. The 2nd column was similar, also with netting. The commander of the guard took prisoner Seraiah the chief Cohen, Zechariah the 2nd-ranking Cohen and 3 doorkeepers. From the city he took an official in charge of the soldiers, 5 close associates of the king who had been found in the city, the army commander's secretary in charge of military conscription, and 60 of the common people found in the city. Nebuzaradan the commander of the guard took them and brought him to the king of Bavel in Rivlah. There in Rivlah, in the land of Hamath, the king of Bavel had them put to death. Thus Yehuda was carried away captive out of his land. The governorship of Gedaliah. Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon appointed Gedaliah the son of Achikam, the son of Shaphan, governor over the people remaining behind in the land of Yehuda after he left. When all the army officers and their men heard that the king of Bavel had made Gedaliah governor, they came to Gedaliah in Mitzpah, Yishmael the son of Netaniah, Yochanan the son of Kareach, Seraiah the son of Tanchumet the Netophathi and Yaazaniah the son of the Markati, they and their men. Taking an oath, Gedaliah said to them, "Don't be afraid of the servants of the Casdim. Just live in the land and serve the king of Bavel, and things will go well for you." But in the 7th month Yishmael the son of Netaniah, the son of Elishama, of royal blood, came with 10 men and assassinated Gedaliah and the Judeans and Casdim who were with him in Mitzpah. In the wake of this, all kinds of people, great and small, as well as the army officers, set out and went to Egypt, because they were afraid of the Casdim. Jehoiachin lifted up out of prison in Babylon. In the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiachin king of Yehuda, in the 12th month on the 27th day of the month, Evil-Merodach began his reign as king of Babel. and in his first year he commuted the sentence of Jehoiachin king of Yehuda and released him from prison. He treated him with kindness and gave him a throne higher than those of the other kings there with him in Bavel. So Jehoiachin no longer had to wear prison clothes. Moreover, he was provided with food as long as he lived. And he was granted a daily allowance by the king to spend on his other needs for as long as he lived.